According to Jung, the human psyche can be broadly divided into two parts, the conscious and the unconscious. The unconscious can be further divided into two parts, the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. Now, in the conscious realm resides the ego. The ego is the center of our consciousness. But that doesn't mean that the ego is the entire consciousness. Rather, it can be considered as an element of the consciousness. It is a kind of mirror in which the psyche can be seen itself and can become aware. Next comes the persona. The persona is simply the mask we put on to fit in our environment and society. It is an attitude that we adapt. It becomes identified with one's personality and offers a psychosocial identity. It is the psychic skin between the ego and the world. Now let's dive into the unconscious. The first layer we encounter in the unconscious is the personal unconscious. The personal unconscious consists of personal, repressed, infantile contents. Here, we find what Jung calls complexes. The complexes are the unconscious contents that have energies of their own and are responsible for the disturbances of consciousness. And now if we dive still deeper, we will find ourselves in the territory of the collective unconscious. And the first thing we encounter here is what Jung calls the shadow. It is the opposite of the persona. Whatever parts of the personality that would ordinarily belong to the ego, if repressed, falls into the shadow. In other words, it is the container for all the rejected parts of the ego. And so, the shadow has an immoral quality, containing features of a person's nature that are contrary to the customs and moral conventions of society. At the deepest layer of the collective unconscious, we find what Jung terms anima or animus. These are subjective personalities that represent a deeper level of the unconscious than the shadow. The anima is the female image inside a man, and the animus is the male image inside a female. The anima is influenced by the experience of the mother, and the animus by the father. The nature of the anima is that of eros or love, and the animus is of logos or reason. That is why it is said that in every man there is a woman, and in every woman there is a man. The collective unconscious is dominated by what Jung calls the archetypes. The archetypes are the primal forms, coding of the deep unconscious. They had always been there, and they produce certain processes in the unconscious one can best compare with myths. They are the primary source of psychic energy and symbols. And finally, encompassing all this is the self. For Jung, the self is more than one's subjectivity, and its essence lies beyond the subjective realm. In the self, subject and object, ego and others are joined in a common field of structure and energy. Jung conceived of it as the prime archetype, the one from which all the other archetypes and archetypal images ultimately derive. In other words, the self is the God in us.